Tonight it's going to be an exciting night because we're going to be talking about the subconscious mind. It's chapter 12 in Think and Grow Rich. And so we're going to cover all things subconscious mind. And so I suppose what I want to do is I want to get underway by, like my son asked me the other night, what is the subconscious mind? So if somebody were to ask you what your subconscious mind is, what would your definition be? And I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to start with Nicolette because this is her territory. I can see the smile on her face.
That was actually a question I asked a client this morning. So, do you know where your subconscious mind is? And of course, that was a question today because we're discussing this topic today here. I always explain it as like, if you've just driven to work this morning, you left the house, and about 5 minutes later, you're all of a sudden in front of the door of work, or your office, or wherever you need to go to do your work. If you work from home, it's not really relevant, but so all of a sudden you're there, and you don't even know how you got there. It's like the autopilot. It's the unconscious, not to the conscious. So not knowing what you just have done. You're just driven there. You don't even know which street you passed, who you passed, how many cyclists were on the road, you name it. It's really your unconscious mind. So a lot of people get confused with subconscious. They go like, oh, what is that? It's the part that you do so automatically and on autopilot. And the whole idea is to get your subconscious or your unconscious mind to the conscious, so you can actually logically understand what happens.
Okay, Gregory.
Yeah, it's exactly like Nicolette said. It's your subconscious is it's in control of your whole life. It's the things that you've learned that became beliefs or habits, and that habitual behavior and activities that you perform in your everyday life, even without thinking, is what creates the reality around you. It's all stored in the subconscious, in your beliefs and programming. And so anything that you've learned and put a lot of focus on, like she said about driving, when you first learn how to drive, you're giving all attention to it. It's something brand new. You're giving intense focus and awareness to it, and there's a lot of emotion involved, whether it's fear or excitement. So that is all forming a new habit in your subconscious. You're thinking about it intensely, but then after you've been doing it for a while, like she said, you're doing it without even thinking. You're on the phone or thinking about this or where you're something else. Your mind is everywhere but on driving. It's just now become habitual behavior. You're doing it without thinking, on autopilot, just like she said. So that's my interpretation of the subconscious mind. It stores all your beliefs and that habitual behavior based on those beliefs are controlling your activities and behaviors without you even realizing what's happening. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, it's so true. We've got all our, and we're going to cover this a little bit later, we've got 5 senses, and everything that we're picking up from the 5 senses are getting stored in our storehouse. Adrian, what's your comments about the subconscious?
I think so. It's subconscious. It's a little bit like muscle memory. Yeah, and when you consider that the brain is a muscle and it can grow and shrink and strengthen and weaken, that the subconscious, a lot of people, I mean, growing up, subconscious was all about subliminal, wasn't it? Subliminal messages from marketing companies and advertisers putting those ideas into your head. And there was a big movement against that happening to young people and all people, actually, in thinking of it as brainwashing. So now everything we fought against in the 70s and 80s about that, when advertisers and marketers found out about psychology and subliminal messaging and putting things into people's subconscious, the tide has turned and people are eating it up, in fact, and addicted to getting that because it's a form of dopamine fixing for them. So it's an interesting concept because a lot of them don't realize that you can use it to control yourself. They only think it's about people controlling them.
So like in the book, he turns around and he says that you've got your 5 senses, your touching, your taste, your sight, your hearing, and the 5th one, whichever one that is. I can't remember right now. But the 5 senses, I think we all know what they are. And he says that all smell. Okay, yeah.
I would say a sixth sense. I always explained it when I was lecturing at a university. The 6th sense is really can be counted as your memory of things. That's a 6th sense because the memory is attached to those 5 senses as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, we will go into the 6th sense, but now what you're saying is that it's through our 5 senses that we gather the information, and it's our conscious mind that allows us to catch these thoughts, and it's like the gatekeeper. It allows the thoughts to go into our subconscious mind or not into our subconscious mind. But everybody in this room is aware that there's so many vibrations, thought vibrations going through the ether and things like that. So do you think our subconscious is being influenced by more than the 5 senses that we have?
Definitely, because your 5 senses also work together. They're not individual, so that's different associations. And then also we have other influences, so for sure.
Yeah. So can you expand on that a bit more? Like, give us an example.
Well, if you go back to like why you should be careful with children growing up and what they're exposed to is that they can also become self-fulfilling prophecies with those kids or even adults. If you're putting something, that was the interesting thing in the book is that there's the 7 positive and the 7 negative, correct?
That's correct. And we'll cover the 7 positive and the 7 negative later on. Because one other thing he does say is that your subconscious mind never stops. It works 24 hours a day. And it doesn't filter your positive or your negative thoughts either. It just, whatever is happening is you picking it up within your senses. Nicholas shook your head. You don't agree?
How I see it and how I quite often explain with the subconscious mind is that you get through your 5 senses, you get the information to you. So you either smell, taste, hear, see, feel things, but your mind is actually doing 3 things before it actually gets to your subconscious. It either deletes it, so kind of goes 1 ear in, 1 ear out because it's not relevant. So that information which you have seen within your senses is not relevant to you. You either distort it, so you actually make it a different story than what you hear. It's kind of Chinese whispers, and that little game when you whisper in somebody's ear and then you go around the circle, and at the end that is a completely different word. That's what your conscious mind does as well before it goes into your subconscious. Or we generalize and we make everything the same. Like, or Australians drink beer, as we said the other day, or I was talking to somebody about it. That's generalized. A lot of them drink tea or coffee or whatever, but you know, so that's happening before it actually hits the subconscious mind. And that's what the book talks about it as well. It deletes it and it distorts it, and also it generalizes it. So even though through those five senses, before it really hits that subconscious, it has done a couple of more things before they actually really take on the information. So there's definitely more senses, but it also goes through a whole bunch of other filters before it hits. Because we have memories and we've got values, we've got beliefs, we've got time, we've got energy, we've got space, all those kind of things are all relevant to what your beliefs are and what hits into your subconscious mind. So I think there's a lot more to it than just the five senses for sure, but it's also a process of what goes in. And what goes into the subconscious mind is actually then relates to and changes into the emotions we actually feel. And the emotions we feel will translate in the state we are. If we're sad, you know, you can see us like, oh, I'm really sad. So the whole state is like negative. But if you're really happy, your posture straight away changes and you're like up and bright and sitting, and your whole state changes, but also your physical body changes. And with that changes also your behaviors. So it's that really circle and that loop, what I believe is just going around and around. So if you change that information, how you get that through your senses, and some of our senses are a lot more activated and a lot more developed than others. And that is different for every person. But if you change that and you change your thoughts, you change everything in that loop. So I think your subconscious mind is definitely a sponge and observes it, but you can definitely change that with making changes in that loop and getting out of that loop and do that differently.
Yeah, that's well said. I think what the way he goes on to explain it, probably in a different chapter, is just your conscious mind is the gatekeeper to make sure that you allow what goes into your subconscious mind. And the thing that is of great influence is you got to mix it with an emotion. And so if you've got an emotion, that's when it'll go through into the subconscious. One of the problems we have in our society is that, and we're going to cover this later on, we've got so many negative emotions happening. And people are reacting. And when you listen to the news and you see a tragic story in the news, you start to emotionalize it and you allow that to go into your subconscious mind. Is that an accurate assessment, Gregory?
Yeah, you have to be really careful what you allow in and what you don't, such as listening to the news. If they're talking something bad in the economy, if you just accept that, then you're letting that get into you. But if you see, okay, well, not for me, you got to adjust what you're hearing to what you want it to be, not necessarily make a lie out of it. But, if the economy's bad for everybody, well, you need to consider, not for me, I have an abundance or whatever. You can't allow the negativity to get in, because it can happen so easily without you realizing it, especially with people watching the news or television. You're getting auto suggestion into your subconscious with what you're hearing every day. If it's something that upsets you or excites you in a good way, then the emotion is involved with that. So it's forming beliefs. A belief can form slowly. It can also happen very quickly. Such as the television and the news, you're taking a little bit at a time over a long period of time. If it's negative or positive, either way, then it's slowly building a belief inside you that's going to control everything that you do. But it can also happen very quickly, such as a traumatic accident or something. That is so intense and has such intense emotion involved with it that it can immediately form a belief that will cause behavior and actions in the future whenever a situation comes up. That can happen instantly. So it's slow or fast. In a traumatic situation, you can't really you can't really decide whether it's coming in or not. It's there. You got to work with that. But when you're getting it slowly, like through television, you got to accept or reject what you're hearing. You got to try to be conscious of what's coming in, because if you just let it come in over and over, it's going to affect your life. It's going to affect everything in your life without you realizing it. I always make the joke, back in the 70s or 80s, growing up watching television, they used to have an interruption for some political report or whatever. Whenever it was over, it would come back on and say, now back to your regularly scheduled programming. And I used to kind of laugh at that, but that's exactly what that's doing. It's programming you if you don't pay attention to what you're receiving from it.
And that's a really good question, because one of the things that I've stopped doing is I've stopped watching Netflix, and I've stopped watching television, and I stopped watching the news, because it is programming. And you think that there's a lot of people that are unaware that they're being programmed, unconsciously being programmed by, oh, Nicolette's got a big smile on her face. Go on, Nicolette, share. And then Adrian, you go
my
through
work,
as well.
you know that, so that's why I'm laughing. But yeah, I totally agree with Gregory is saying, absolutely. But for me, it's also like Gregory is saying, like, don't get the negative, in this case, the negative news, and watching the news, getting that into your subconscious. But for me, it's first of all clear the whole subconscious, because it's full of BS and full of shit. So you need to you need to clean the shit out first before you put the good stuff back in. So we can say, okay, I stopped watching the news, but you've been programmed before birth, generations ago, lifetimes ago, all that stuff. So if you don't clear that away, you've still been programmed by mom and dad and social media and friends, and ever since you've been born, before you were born. So if you don't start clearing that away and clean that shit up, as I always say, then what's the point of putting the good stuff in? As like all the beautiful things we're doing, all the things, reading books and getting all the good information and have the good emotions and the positive emotions. As human natures, we always go directly to negative. That's just how we programmed. It's always negative. You listen to people always complain and they have a problem, and it's all the things they don't have, what I talk about. Most people, I'm generalizing here, are not talking about the abundance and the gratitude they have every day for everything. They might do the gratitude practices and stuff, but that's quite often not when they see. But then also, I don't know how it is in America, but in Australia, they always say, how are you? We don't say that back in Holland, in Europe. And people say, yeah, good. Now, well, how are you really? People just say good because it's just, good, but they never talk about their feelings. So we want to be polite and like ask how you are. But talking about that and how people are just always going in the negative, there's always something I can't do instead of I can do. I am. And I think to take that out and change that from way back and clean out everything first before we start putting all the good things back in is the way to go, because you're still programmed from so much younger than just today and last year and in the last 10 years. It's cleaning out the stuff first before you put all the good stuff back in. Because
So
that's
the
how
next question.
programmed.
Yeah, look, the next question, I know we've covered this before, but I want to cover it again. How do you clean out all that shit? Let's say you've decided, you know what? I realize the news is bad. I realize I've been programmed by television. What's the way to actually clean out all that shit so that you can put in that good stuff?
I think you have to do it quite consciously and then reinforce it with your subconscious.
I believe
I
you
think
can't do it by yourself. You need to do that with somebody, and not saying me, but it's just whoever it is.
I agree. I agree with most of what you say, Nicolette, because you are very good at this. I think with the other person, sometimes it can be very detailed, or it could be just simply saying something out loud to somebody is enough to let go of those things sometimes. That's it can be a good first step, but some people, they need actually a bit more interaction than just letting it out. They need to process it with somebody else to put it in the right perspective and then close the door on it, kind of.
Well, you don't close the door on it. You take the learnings, and the learnings you take to the now and to the future. Because nothing is right or wrong what has happened or how you've been programmed. They only did the best they could do with the resources they had at the time. But you can learn from the past, and you take the learnings. But you can't ask yourself a question into your subconscious and give a conscious answer. So
What
I'm just
about-
saying you need to do it with somebody as such, that somebody can ask you those questions, so you actually can ask your unconscious mind, because that's what is the change. The questions that you ask to your unconscious mind, and you can't do that consciously when you tap into your unconscious mind.
What about when before you go to sleep and you say, okay, I want to have a solution to a particular problem, and I've looked at it all these ways. I want to wake up with the solution, and you put that into your subconscious.
Yeah, that's part of it, but it's still not cleaning out the old stuff. It's again, it's the now and the future thing you're talking about, rather than cleaning up the past. And I think cleaning up the past, you really need to have somebody or multiple people and different people to help you just asking those questions and really clean it up. It's not going back into the trauma, but what Gregory was saying, that you have some of the really significant emotional events, you know, if you have an accident or a trauma, that's what affects you. And that affects you not just emotionally, that is actually stuck in your body and physical body. That's how diseases start. Because it's stuck trauma, it's stuck emotion and stuck energy. And you're clearing your energy, and you're clearing the emotion, and you're clearing that significant emotional event out of your subconscious. It doesn't mean you need to close the door, but you also then take the learnings, and from the learnings, what you do is really make better decisions for yourself. And again, it's not about right or wrong, but it is a better decision for yourself, because you take the learnings and you know what didn't work and what is going to work right now.
Would you describe it as attributing a different value to the memory?
I describe it as clearing out the negative emotions and the limited beliefs first, before you then can find what your values are, and then install your new values. Because your value system is quite often disrupted because of all the negative emotions. And your subconscious not understanding what are your true values. Because we believe and we think that these are our values, and that's our beliefs. But if you change your beliefs, your values will be different as well, or you interpret them in a different way, which will be a lot more powerful without those programming beliefs you had in the past.
So one of the things you said, Nicolette, is that
everybody's like,
this is a conversation we want, is to explore all these different things. And one of the things you said, Nicolette, was that you need more, you could have more than one person. Or so my question really, and anyone can answer this, and I know Paul's done coaching as well, so Paul, you can answer this as well. But do you need a professional person to help you clean out that negative stuff? Or if you start hanging around positive people, would you automatically just start to take on their positivity, and just through your conversation start to clear out that negative as well?
I think you still clear it out. Absolutely. That's the 5 people you hang out with, as we all know, but that's again, it's in the now, but you haven't cleared the past. That's what, like, you can be positive now, you can hang out like as we do, we're hanging out together, but there's still, you can still definitely in group, like it doesn't need to be one-on-one, it can be definitely in a group, and that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow anyway. But in a group it's very, very powerful. But it's you, to me it's still doing the deep inner work and the interventions and the change work with clearing out the past and clearing your timeline is really what really makes the change and the permanent change into your new beliefs and your new values. And then you add on all, so you're positive getting together, you're hanging out with the right people, you're eating the right food. I always say you need to clear all the toxic out of your life. And I say that over and over again. And it's people, it's food, it's plastic, it's chemicals, you name it. That's all toxic, which negative emotions are toxic, all that stuff, shit needs to come out, literally and physically out of your life, out of your house, out of your environment. It's so important what your environment looks like. But that's more like talking about that right now, when what adds on to after you've cleaned up your mess. But you need to clean first before you can build up again. Like it's like building a house. You can't build the roof first. You know, you need to clean out the ground first, and the earth and whatever. You need to all the toxic out of that before you start building the building blocks and build your house. So if you start with the top, it just collapses because there's no foundation. So you need to have that foundation cleaned up and clear and fresh and clean before you start going.
Would you also agree that if you're clearing out and you're not necessarily closing the door, that you need to replace some of those thoughts with something better?
But I said not replace or not close the door. They always will be there, but it is how you react to them. It's your reaction to if that happens again. So if the trigger comes again, and the trigger happens and it makes you like angry, for example, it's how you then react to it, and that being in balance. It's not that we clear anger out of your past and you clear those negative emotions that you will never be angry. But it is the way you react to it, because you've broken the cycle. So your reaction will be different to anger, and your behavior will be different to anger. And that's what makes the difference. You still get angry, but you won't have these big bursts of explosion of like, rah, 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 whatever you do, or you don't hit people anymore. You don't start yelling and bad language and all that stuff. It might be just like, I'm really angry, give me 5 minutes. Just hitting a pillow, for example, and take a deep breath, and you go like, okay, I'm not angry anymore. But if you don't know how to do it differently, you smack somebody in the face. I don't know what you do when you're angry, but if that's what your habit and your behavior is, and that's normal to you because that's how you've been programmed, that's what you keep on doing. But if you change it, you might just react differently to it.
I had kind of the same.
Gregory?
Yeah, I was going to comment on the same thing, or ask what your thoughts were on the same thing. I think it might be what Adrian was talking about, or maybe a little different, but I was thinking about the replacing of a negative with a positive. And you've kind of answered that. I think, the replacing of a negative reaction with a positive reaction is if you don't replace the negative with a positive, doesn't it leave a void in that area? I mean, you have to have one or the other in every area of life, and in your, so just removing a negative kind of leaves an emptiness in that particular area. So, but to replace it, then you replace the negative with a positive, then you're getting a positive reaction in the future, as opposed to the negative reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Gregory. And the replacement, as you call it, of the negative to a positive, I call it removing the negative and replacing that with a learning. And the learning is a positive learning for you for the future. And that's what you get out when the questions are asked and your subconscious and your unconscious mind give the answers. These are the learnings. And these are the positive learnings you have learned of that negative emotion in the past. And you take those positive learnings, you replace that negative thought and that negative emotion with a positive learning for you, which you can use in the future. Absolutely. So there's a replacement, and that is that learning you bring in.
I want to hear from Paul Cummings, because I know Paul and I, we did a lot of this together in the group together. What's your thoughts on this, Paul?
There's the old thing about you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with the most. That affects who you are to an extent. But often trying to find those 5 people can be difficult at the level, because obviously they're still looking for people up, sometimes to raise themselves further up from where they are. But there's an extract in here that talks about the subconscious may be voluntarily directed only through habit under the directions given. Okay, it talks about faith, and that takes time. Be patient, be persistent. So as Gregory was saying, if you can replace the negative with positive, but easier said than done. But the thing you were talking about, I think, Paul, before, was about the coaching perspective, having somebody that can actually help you to go through, because we've all got these things from the past that give us our foundation, and we, whether it's environment, parental, all those family systems types of things, cultural, which side of the tracks you grew up and all that sort of thing, and what happened to you at school and as a kid. So to change that, you have to have faith in yourself, and that's what they're talking about in here. But having the support around you to actually do that is where it makes the difference, because you can still know it and still not get through it. I mean, I know about it and I'm still stuck in stuff.
You should go see Nicolette. She's an awesome coach. All right, so it says the subconscious mind will not remain idle. If you fail to plant desires into your subconscious mind, it will feed upon the thoughts which reach it as a result of your neglect. So there's 2 things within this statement. The first one is desire, and this is what I love about this book. It keeps coming back to those 13 principles they keeps talking about. And Nicolette's smiling again because she understands what it's about, right? So you've got to have the desire first, but if you don't have this desire, you fall into the neglect, and it's through this neglect that you allow one of those 7 negative emotions to come into your consciousness and into your being, and you don't want that because you want to have a great experience of life. So Gregory, what do you think about that?
Yeah, your subconscious absolutely does not remain idle, and that's why you got to, your desire, something that you want in your life, you really got to focus on that. You got to put effort into thinking about that, because for whatever reason, the subconscious mind does tend to go to the negative, and that may be from the before we're born, and definitely from the time we're born. Between then and adulthood, we receive so much, and a lot of people grow up in a negative, with hearing and living in a maybe not necessarily a negative environment, but they pick up a lot of negativities that are then deep set beliefs when they get into adulthood. So those things are very difficult. That takes, it's an easy concept, replace the negative with a positive, but it's not always an easy task, because if you grew up having something deeply embedded in your subconscious, you may know it's there and it needs to be changed, but that's going to take effort. And but your subconscious is never idle, and that goes, I think, into the self-talk thing. If you have a desire, you can focus on that at certain times of the day. That's great. But all the in-between times, when you're just thinking and going about your daily activities, everything that your mind, you're talking, we think in words. So everything that you're thinking about, if it's negative, that is constantly reinforcing the negative beliefs that's in your mind, that is destroying the positive that you're trying to get into, because it's not idle. You have to pay attention all the time. The negative comes so easy, but something new that's outside of what they call the comfort zone, which is all your programming, what you're used to. If you want something better and beyond that, you have to consciously put effort into keeping that on your mind and watching everything that is said throughout the day. Everything that you think about, read, listen to, see, hear, all the physical faculties, all the ways that you're getting information into you that you have to either accept or reject. You have to make sure it's in line with what you want, because if it's not, it's taking you away from what you're trying to achieve. Because your subconscious is never idle. It's going to think about something. It's going to be on a subject at all times. So if you're not making it be on the subject of what you want, of something positive or better, it's going to immediately go back to what is already there.
Yes, Paul.
Yeah, just following on from what Gregory said, the self-talk is really important, and we tend to take on the negative self-talk more so than the positive as well. So to counteract it is really difficult. And I was just sort of thinking, what's some of the first things that kids learn? The first word they learn is no. Don't touch that. And that sets a whole kid's life. They learn that you can't ask for what you want, or all these other things. And there's something else I was reading recently about. And it follows on from what Gregory said. Yeah, be careful of what you say to yourself, because oh, you idiot or something. If you muck something up, well, your subconscious is actually taking that on as you're an idiot, and maybe not fully, but you say it to yourself enough, and that's what starts to become present in your subconscious, and then affecting other parts of your life as well. And then that's something else that you've got to break and try and get out of it as well.
I'm glad that you started talking about the self-talk, because I want Gregory to share with us the big breakthrough he had about 2 weeks ago with regards to his self-talk and his auto-suggestion. Can you share that with us, Gregory?
Yeah, basically I had some experience with realizing that I was thinking negative thoughts throughout the day, and also realizing that was destroying everything that I was after. And because that's, you spend more of your day going about your daily business without thinking necessarily about what you want in your future. And everything that you're thinking is that self-talk, that is repeated auto-suggestion. So if it's negative, you're creating negative in your life. If you can make it positive, you'll start to see more positive in your life. And my experience was some situations that I commonly do on a regular basis. Some of those were always been negative in the past. And when I realized that I was immediately thinking negative thoughts towards that, I started to replace those thoughts with positive thoughts and positive feelings, visualizing the way I wanted that day and that situation to actually occur. And it actually happened. Those days played out exactly the way I foreseen them, like playing it out like I had made a video, like watching a video. I was watching in my mind what I wanted to happen, and it actually happened. And that's just a day. And then I did it again, so that's another day, and it happened a couple different times. It's not saying I didn't have some less positive days in between, but I've successfully done that several times now, and I'm starting to realize if I can continue to do that every day, a day after day turns into a week after week. You can literally visualize and change your entire outer conditions simply by watching your inner talk and staying focused on the better that you want. But goes right back into what we just spoke about. If you're not paying attention constantly to your thoughts and making sure they're in line with what you want, it can slip back to the negative, back to the old comfort zone that everybody's trying to get out of usually. And if you allow that to happen, you stay right where you are, where you don't want to be.
Yeah, that was a great story. Okay, Paul, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, and I guess something that I've spoken to you all about before is the warehouse thing and trying to find the warehouse for the business. And that's been a bit of a struggle with either pricing. You know, I've taken some other people with me to look at some and they've liked them. And I've thought, there's no way I like this. It's terrible. And I was very close to grabbing some in the last couple of weeks, and both times I've seen it one day, rang the agent the next morning, instead of just taking somebody through, they've signed up. That happened twice. You know, it was really pushing the comfort zone in terms of pricing. One of them was the right size, but the price was quite over the top. And I sort of had a bit of a picture in my mind. Anyway, one came up on Friday, looked really good. It was as big or bigger than some of the others I've been looking for, and it was cheaper. Looked really good. You know, I went and I sort of had a good feeling about it. There weren't many pictures. It's a little bit outside the area, but only by about 2 kilometres. And when I had a look at it today, and it's like, wow, this is the place. So, you know, it's sort of partially, you know, maybe that was the subconscious or the universe telling me that those weren't the right, and I just needed to wait the extra week to find this one type thing. So I've put in an offer from it. I'm hoping I'm going to get it. The space itself ticks all the boxes. It's got a corporate training area. It's going to be a little bit tight for the simulators, but it's an old warehouse that's been converted really nicely. So it's standalone. So there's no body corporate or rates or anything to pay. So it's even cheaper again. It's on its own block. There's only one on it. So anyway, so I think that. Sorry.
So congratulations, that's great. Just earlier on in the book, when you were talking about decision making, the people that make decisions, the people that succeed in life make decisions quickly. Yeah, Nicolette remembers that part. They make decisions quickly and are slow to change those decisions. Right? We've only got like 12 minutes left because we know Nicolette's got to go. So I want to get on to the 7 positive and the 7 negative emotions, right? So the 7 major positive emotions are desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. The 7 negative emotions are fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. I think you all agree with me that most people tend to trend towards the negative emotions. Why is this the case? Nicolette, I love, and Adrian, Nicolette and Adrian, I love your feedback on these things.
Go.
No. Go, Nicolette.
I was going to say it's all about our programming.
Sorry?
It's all about our programming. It's how we've been programmed. And to take it straight to a big topic maybe, but I just want to mention it. To me, that's part of the program. That's part of the plan. They want to keep everybody in fear. They want to keep everybody in a negative emotion. There's a reason why depression is so high, why suicide is so high. We've been kept in fear, in hatred, in revenge, in greed, in anger the last couple of years, especially. Because people just are in a lower frequency. All the negative emotions are, again, back in that lower frequency. And that's in the darkness. And we want to keep everybody in the darkness. instead of getting into the light and getting into the positive emotions and the positive energies and the higher consciousness and higher frequencies and higher vibrations. That's not what they want. So they keep us in the dark and they keep us in all the negative emotions. So
I've got to ask you this question.
we're very busy to get everybody into the light and getting into the positive emotions.
So
That's why we
Nicolette,
have conversations like this, I believe.
who is they? You keep saying they want to keep us in the dark.
Whatever you believe is who is having the plan. I don't know who they are, but
Who's got the plan? Who's the one that's created this plan?
Good question. What's the purpose of the plan? But I think we're just in general programmed to be negative as human beings.
I don't know if it's programmed, but it is definitely is sort of like inherent to be risk adverse as a human being for our own safety. So that does tend to be the negative thing. What happens is we go overboard with it, and you have people who are absolutely afraid of everything, and paranoid, and maybe hypochondriacs, and that's a good case for subliminal, like when they they see something about a certain disease and then they start thinking that they have it. Is one aspect of it. And people who are hoarders and fearful of not having that collection of whatever they're not throwing away. But I don't believe the programming externally works, because most people do take the media with a grain of salt. They don't blindly absorb it. And if you're not talking about media, and we don't blindly absorb everything that our teachers or parents or schools or families, or we don't, in fact, unconsciously, we go against it. What has happened is that people have forgotten that the choice is the important part, whether you choose to believe something or whether you choose to accept it or not accept it. I was told, like, a long time ago, my friend went to India with her Indian friend, and they were looking at all the poor people there on the streets and everything. And this Indian woman who lived in New York or New Jersey said to her, "It's not terrible, it's a choice. They choose to be that." And the reason that stuck with me is because everything is a choice, really. And what you said, Nicolette, is really a choice about how you react to something. And let's face it, there's no parents that sort of anyone's parents that study enough about the brain normally to be conscious about what they're saying to their kids. It's
That's why I
mostly,
believe you program, because you program from 0 to 7 is when your subconscious mind is done. So
oh wow, you're talking to me. And like, my mom had this book in our house that I read, was exactly that title, 0 to 7.
yeah,
And I remember, and I read that and dipped into it all through high school and university, and not, and I wasn't a teenage parent either. Took me a couple of decades before I had kids, but I remember my wife saying to me in Bangkok, "Why are you spending so much money on our kids going to nursery and kindergarten at this private school?" And I had to explain to her, I said, 0 to 7 is where you need to front end the cost, because if you don't pay for their education before they're 7 years old, you end up paying for it the rest of their life, changing that behavior.
Yeah.
So, and I can see the results of it. I see it every day. But go back to why this chapter is in Think and Grow Rich. Is because the biggest enemy is us, is ourselves. And what you're all saying, be careful what we say to each other. And I think that's the take home point too. He talks about prayer, that prayer, you could call it prayer, you could call it gratitude, would be another word. You could call it self-talk, and it could be self-talk that is out loud, as most people do pray, is self-talk but out loud to a wall or a sentient being, or to your other self, your other ego. Subliminal can be very interesting too. We had an email from our landlord saying we had been approved to have a small dog last week. And I went for a walk on Saturday thinking, you have to be careful what you wish for. Our kids want a dog badly, but we don't live in the perfect house for a big dog, and a small dog would be a little bit more chaos. And I went for my normal, I went for not my normal walk. I went a different route, and I saw two vans parked outside a house, and both vans on the side of them had signage saying they were from the Blind Dog Association. And I immediately thought, oh, if my kids really want a dog and then a year later they don't want a dog, you've got not very many options what you can do with a dog that you don't want. And I thought, I'll contact the Blind Dog Association and see if they need people to raise puppies to become guide dogs. So your subconscious can make you think of things or solutions to a problem that you might not otherwise think of.
So we're running out of time. I know we've got 2 minutes, so I'm just going to finish. I'm glad you started to speak about prayer. And so I'm just going to finish with what he says about prayer. He says, prayer of last resort. People pray only after everything else has failed. They go to prayer with minds filled with fear and doubt. This is the emotion the subconscious mind acts upon and passes on to the infinite intelligence. The emotion infinite intelligence receives and acts on. It goes on to say, there are no toll gates between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. The communication costs nothing except patience, faith, persistence, and sincere desire to communicate. The subconscious mind is the intermediary which translates one's prayers into terms which infinite intelligence can recognize, present the message, and bring back the answer in the form of a definite plan or idea for providing the object of the prayer. So with that, I know Nicholas got to go, so thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will be back next week. I don't know what the next subject is. Anyone know what the next subject is?
The brain.
The brain. Oh, very good. All right, so we'll be coming back talking about the brain to next Monday night, same time, same channel. Thank you for your time tonight, and have a great evening.